At this point, I'd like to welcome to the podium my teammate, Dr. Nick Armstrong, who's the Managing Director of Research at the Institute for Veterans and Military Families here at Syracuse, to introduce our next speaker. Nick.
Thank you, Mike, and good morning, everyone. As I stand here in this stunning facility, I can't help but take a moment to pause and think, what a privilege. What a privilege to be here among so many distinguished guests who care deeply about this issue, including my former teammate, now University of Montana President Seth Bodnar. Let me echo our sincere thanks to all of you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to be here today. Also, what a privilege it has been to immediately gain in Sebastian Junger's term a tribe here at Syracuse University after serving in a time of war. Like so many, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do after leaving the Army, but I knew I wanted to keep serving one way or another, and luckily I found that right here. For this, I'm grateful to many leaders, faculty, and colleagues, not least of which Vice Chancellor Haney, Dean Van Slyke, Chancellor Severud, and many others for the opportunity and the privilege to continue serving here for the last decade and a half. And finally, what a privilege it is today to introduce our morning keynote speaker, the Honorable Ash Vazirani, Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness. Mr. Vazirani is a highly accomplished leader who has dedicated his career to serving military families and advancing national security. In his current role, he serves as the Principal Assistant to the Undersecretary on all matters related to force readiness policy, force management, and health affairs, education and training, and all quality of life matters related to the U.S. military and DoD civilian workforce. His impressive resume includes more than 2 decades as a management consultant, where he worked with leading tech and pharmaceutical companies, as well as a nonprofit executive supporting the military community. Most relevant to today, however, Mr. Vazirani is not only a U.S. Navy veteran, he is both the son of and a father to a U.S. Marine. How fitting. We are currently in the month of the military child, talking about the future of the all-volunteer force, a force whose past success cannot be claimed without the sacrifices of many millions of family members. Yet, as we heard in this last panel, whose future increasingly looks like a family business. Prior to assuming his current post, Mr. Vazirani served as the Executive Director and CEO of the National Military Family Association, where he regained its 4-star charity rating and expanded its programming, including a child care fee relief program. Mr. Vazirani holds a mechanical engineering degree from Vanderbilt University, as well as engineering graduate master's and an MBA from Northwestern University. He's also served as a member of the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering and Medicine Committee on the Well-Being of Military Families, and serves on the advisory board of the Global War on Terrorism Memorial Foundation. Please join me in a warm welcome for the Honorable Ash Vazirani.
Good morning. Dr. Armstrong, thank you for that kind introduction. Secretaries O'Keefe and Rosker, for the thought-provoking discussion this morning, thank you very much, and thanks for setting the stage for us to have this discussion. You've both provided extraordinary service to the nation, and we're grateful for it. Thank you. Secretary Austin sends his regrets for not being able to join us today in this important forum. And on his behalf, I'd like to start by expressing my gratitude to Syracuse University, the University of Tennessee, to Chancellor Severud, to Provost Salter. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to have this discussion and to engage in a discussion about service. And I'm hopeful that through this dialogue, we'll come to a shared understanding of the opportunities and challenges we face as a nation with respect to national service, and most importantly, that we find avenues for partnership and collaboration to inspire service. Thank you as well for giving us the opportunity to hear from Sebastian Junger yesterday evening. He's got an incredible story, and he's an incredible storyteller. And I think that's one of the things I'd like to touch on today is the importance of stories, and I'll comment on that. So if I may, I'd like to share a little bit of my story. Education and service are at the core of who I am. My family emigrated to the U.S. when I was 3 years old. My maternal grandfather and my father were both educators at the university level and moved their families here to the U.S. because of opportunities in U.S. higher education. After my father passed, my single mother of 5 children put herself through law school and eventually married a Marine veteran who lost his sight in Vietnam. My stepdad's blindness didn't stop him. He earned a master's in rehabilitation and continued serving as an advocate for veterans and retired from the federal workforce after serving at the Corporation for National and Community Service. Also dedicated to service to our country, my mother served as a professional staff member in the Maryland legislature and the U.S. Congress. My parents' example of service above self inspired my decision to serve in the U.S. Navy. I attended college as a pathway to a commission and pursued graduate studies following my active service. My wife earned her doctorate in public health as we raised our 2 children. She now develops and implements public health programs working with school nurses. I'm blessed to have grown up in a home where service to nation and community was the family business. I learned the American dream is more than about what you achieve and build for yourself, rather what you do for others. These are the values my wife and I have tried to instill in our 2 children. Our son's a Marine stationed at Camp Lejeune, and our daughter is beginning a doctoral program in physical therapy. Now, my story is unique, as every personal story is. However, my story is common, and I'm confident each of you has a unique, compelling story of education and service. So that's where I'll focus my remarks, and in typical DoD fashion, with the bottom line up front, education and service are linked. My call to action will be for us to join in a national call to service, and by doing so, increasing pathways to higher education and to the connectedness between the people we serve and the institutions and organizations we are members of. As been noted, this year is the 50th anniversary of the all-volunteer force. It's also the 75th anniversary of President Truman's executive order that began the process of desegregating the armed services, and the enactment of the Women's Armed Services Integration Act that made permanent the inclusion of women as regular members of the Army, Navy, Marine Corps, and Air Force, and now, of course, the Space Force as well. These milestones are an opportune time to consider the state of the total force, which includes 2.3 million active and reserve service members and approximately 900,000 civilian employees of the Department of Defense. People are an extremely important element to the senior leadership of the Defense Department. Secretary Austin established 3 priorities, and one of these priorities is taking care of our people. The National Defense Strategy recognizes people are critical to our success and calls on the department to attract, retain, and promote a workforce with the skills and abilities we need to creatively solve national security challenges in a complex global environment. Broaden our recruitment pool to reflect all of the United States, including historically marginalized communities, and promote a diversity of backgrounds and experiences to drive innovative solutions across the enterprise. These imperatives apply to both military personnel and DoD civilian employees, though the challenges are different. Difficulties with military recruiting have been widely reported and discussed this morning, but this is not the first time that we've had recruiting challenges, and Secretary Rosker pointed that out. For instance, in 2007, during the height of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, we faced recruiting difficulties. Many factors have been blamed for today's recruiting challenges: reduced interest in military service, lower eligibility rates, a tight labor market, and certainly the impact of the pandemic, which has disrupted so much of American life. And just last week, writers in the Wall Street Journal blamed cultural rot, a narrative of victimhood, a lack of patriotism for the military's recruiting challenges. But I think that bemoaning the younger generation is not only disrespectful and cynical, it also misses the opportunity before us. I believe young people want to create options and opportunity and drive impact. First, the rising generation values education. Roughly 2/3 of young Americans aspire to attain a bachelor's degree. Pay is the top motivator to serve in the military, but others are to obtain an education and to travel. In 2021, 70% of high school seniors indicated that they want a career that contributes to society, up from 53% in 1976. This is a generation that wants to engage in the world, not shrink from it. Furthermore, Generation Z has high expectations for employers. They most seek an organization that cares about employees' well-being, is diverse and inclusive of all people, and has ethical leadership. My perspective is that we face a different challenge, a decreasing connection between Americans, especially younger Americans, and the military. Younger Americans who are not exposed to the unique and compelling stories of service and the pathways to education offered by service. And this is a missed opportunity because the military embraces many of the values these young people seek in life and in a career. We have a problem of awareness or lack thereof. Fewer youth are considering military service, and when they do, they tell us the risks of military service are top of mind. With fewer young people in this country having a direct connection to military service, their ideas about military life are likely shaped by negative stories in the press and entertainment rather than reality. Military service itself is a family business. My family is an example of that, with about 75% of enlistees having a family history of service. In contrast, only 13% of younger Americans have a parent who served in the military, down from 40% in 1995. And only 8% of young Americans agree or strongly agree that people in the U.S. military share a lot in common with me. The people who are closest to military service are most likely to seek it out. In contrast, it's hard to aspire to something that you don't know about or can't see yourself in. This is another reason why our total force needs to reflect the nation we defend. Simultaneously, trust in institutions is dropping. As recently as 2018, 74% of American adults had a great deal or quite a lot of confidence in the military as an institution. By 2022, confidence had dropped to 64%. Among youth ages 16 to 21, the share with a favorable impression of the military dropped from 46% in 2018 to 35% in 2022. But these declines are not exclusive to the military. Trust is declining across the board in institutions, including the presidency, the legislative branch, public schools, the healthcare system, religious organizations, newspapers, business, and the criminal justice system. Confidence in the higher education system has also dropped. In 2020, more than 2/3 of Americans said that colleges had a positive effect on the nation. By 2022, barely half agreed. So yes, we have a significant challenge. We must find better ways to connect the younger Americans with younger Americans and to show them the opportunities available through military service, and that these opportunities do not preempt getting a college education or having a life outside the military. Those opportunities in the military are significant. The military is making profound investments in human capital that benefit individuals and society well after their service concludes. Each year, the department spends more than $3 billion on programs that leverage higher education and professional development to expand the capacity of our workforce. The sum includes our investments in the military service academies and ROTC, for which institutions of higher education, including many of those that you lead, are our essential partners. What is less known is that the Department of Defense spends $500 million every year on tuition assistance and similar programs to help current service members earn certificates, certifications, college degrees to advance both their military careers and their own professional development. And Secretary Rosker pointed to that as well. In fact, many of our senior enlisted leaders hold an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, master's degrees, doctorate degrees. As Secretary Austin says, many of our most senior enlisted leaders could lead the military forces of other nations. Our investment in educating and training healthcare providers, again, much of which is in partnership with institutions like yours, is nearing $500 million a year. And the investments I've discussed do not include the post-9/11 GI Bill, which has provided educational benefits for 800,000 veterans and their families since its inception in 2009. And we certainly appreciate what institutions like yours are doing to bring student veterans like Jared Lyons back to campus to earn their degrees. With such a significant investment in the human capital of service members, it's no surprise that the unemployment rate for veterans is a full percentage below that for non-veterans. This is a story we need to tell better. The skills learned on the job, the educational benefits the service members receive during and after service lead to fulfilling and successful careers. But DoD's recruitment challenges are not only reserved for its uniformed personnel. The U.S. military relies heavily on our civilian workforce. 25% of the total force are civilians. The civilian workforce in the DoD is the largest of any federal agency. We need cybersecurity, healthcare, finance, and procurement talent, and we often have difficulties filling these crucial positions. For example, more than 1/4 of the civilian medical provider positions at military medical treatment facilities are unfilled. We have difficulty hiring and retaining individuals for these crucial jobs that contribute directly to the health, wellness, and readiness of our service members and military families. To meet these challenges, we must also leverage all of America's people, especially as the rising generation is the most diverse ever. We're not where we need to be, but we are making slow progress. We must do more to ensure that every service member has pathways of opportunity. Among military officers, 9% are Black, 9% are Hispanic, 6% are Asian Americans, all underrepresented compared to the general population. And the most underrepresented group is women. 17% of enlisted service members are women, and nearly 20% of officers. Any organization taking on tough problems needs to confront these problems from many perspectives. The Department and Military Services routinely deal with ambiguity and risk as we confront some of the most complex challenges and threats facing our nation. I'd venture to say that we're the best in the world at assessing and mitigating national security risk, and that DoD is a great place to develop capabilities that are valued across many sectors. We absolutely need a workforce that grapples with these problems from diverse perspectives. And if we have that, that means we'll have people who think differently, have a variety of backgrounds and skills and life experiences, who feel empowered to speak up and contribute because they believe their peers and superiors will take them seriously and value their contributions. And oh, by the way, they are highly likely to be demographically different. The Department of Defense is working to meet these challenges, and we have unparalleled opportunities. We've established the department's first ever DEIA strategic plan, named a Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer, and established the DoD 2040 Task Force to test solutions to broaden our talent pipeline. We've reviewed and updated our recruiting content to make sure it represents the diversity of America. We've updated hairstyle and grooming policies to promote equity. We've removed photographs from promotion board packets and have monitored the demographics of promotion board outcomes. And we are developing unconscious bias training for the force. We hear a lot of rhetoric about diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. But the bottom line is that DEIA is an imperative for modern organizations, for high-performance organizations, and that readiness is enabler, and that one that is readiness is enabler for our military. Our DEIA efforts generate unit cohesion, which is critical for our forces to train and fight as one, and to deter and defeat adversaries. Just this month, the department hired the first ever Chief Talent Management Officer, Brent Parmiter, who's here with us today. For too long, and despite our integrated total force, we have treated talent management in silos for military and civilian personnel. For the first time, we have a leader charged specifically with conducting a comprehensive review of DoD's talent management framework, which includes talent acquisition, workforce development, and the workforce strategy that stitches it all together. We know, for example, that we have invested less in our civilian workforce, from recruiting to professional development and training to retention, than we have in our uniformed forces. That must change. We must be competitive on pay and recruiting and on time to hire. We are working to reduce our time to hire from 89 days to 30 days. We already have some important tools, including the Direct Hire Authority for recent graduates, which provides an easier pathway to hire the next generation of public servants. The department is building a brand new primary prevention workforce, which will focus on integrated prevention of harmful behaviors such as sexual assault, sexual harassment, intimate partner violence, and suicide. In addition to a comprehensive review of talent management, we are also reviewing the workforce pipeline in key areas. One critical need is civilian health care providers who work in military medical treatment facilities. As I said earlier, just 1/4 of these positions are vacant. Last year, Secretary Austin created an independent review committee on suicide prevention and response. Many of the recommendations of the committee are focused on building the behavioral health workforce. The department is evaluating the feasibility of ways to expand the civilian workforce pipeline. For example, individuals who finish their undergraduate degrees could work as behavioral health case managers at military clinics, doing the essential non-clinical work that helps ensure service members and their families get the care and follow-up they need. Then the department could expand scholarship, education, and residency programs to train and license new behavioral health providers in exchange for a service commitment at a military clinic. Increasingly, we recognize that effective talent management must address the full career life cycle, and it must accommodate the evolving workforce, which increasingly expects flexibility. The Space Force, for example, has developed a proposal for a new personnel system that would allow guardians to seamlessly transition between full-time and part-time military service in lieu of a traditional reserve component. The Army has used new authorities to allow new officers who have hard-to-find critical skills and experiences to enter military service at an advanced rank. The Marine Corps has developed a new talent management plan that envisions Marines leaving military service to work in the private sector and then subsequently returning to uniformed service to contribute their newfound skills to the military mission. And for those who seek a career that contributes to society, DoD civilians and military service members get to work on critical missions in defense of their nation every day. Many involve some of the most exciting areas, including cybersecurity, space, energy, climate, and advanced technologies. DoD offers all that and more, but many younger Americans don't know that. It's time for a call to service to the nation. The service we need to highlight includes military service, public service such as our civil service employees at DoD, and national service programs like AmeriCorps and Peace Corps. I would ask all of you to help propagate and amplify this call to service and encourage the students at your institutions to consider some form of national or community service. I believe higher education is an ideal partner to share this message. Military service is a bridge between high school and college, and also a potential bridge between college and work. Too often, the military is falsely seen as an alternative to college or a last resort option. We need to reframe that narrative so that Americans understand that military service is a pathway to greater education. We could use your help. I ask that you share with your students the opportunities that the Department of Defense offers in both military and civilian service, and to share that we need a multitude of skills and passions from technology to language to healthcare and beyond. We have a compelling and critical mission, and that military service and public service are ways to give back and be fulfilled, ways to help others and defend the nation. If we want to remain the world's premier military force, we need to evolve and see ourselves through the lens of the future generation. For a generation that values options, opportunity, and wants to drive impact, I believe pursuing some form of public service will enable them to achieve their goals. And I think something the department could offer to higher education is a stronger partnership to help provide and finance students for colleges and universities while also building our military and civilian workforce pipeline. I have an additional request. I'm curious about the military service and public service experiences of our participants. If you'd indulge me, if you'd raise your hand if you've served in the military. Vast majority. Thank you for being part of the all-volunteer force. Now, for those of you who've served in public service or some kind of government employee or as an elected official or as a member of a governmental advisory committee or board, please raise your hand. Again, a large number. Thank you for your commitment to service. May I ask all of you who have participated in military service or public service to share your unique service story with those in your community, especially young people. I'd ask that rather than sharing stories of institutions, we'd share unique and personal stories. Sharing personal stories of service is an important way that we can build awareness, interest, and trust in our institutions, and inspire young people to pursue education and opportunities to serve their communities and our nation. Thank you for allowing me to share my perspective this morning with you. Now I'd like to hear your thoughts and ideas. How can we as a department better communicate the career and education opportunities in military and public service to the rising generation? How can the department better develop better or new partnerships with institutions of higher education to build our workforce pipeline and develop our workforce? What are college students looking for today in a career and an employer? How are they learning about career opportunities? What are effective ways to make a call to service that resonates with college students and those who want to pursue higher education? I'm eager to hear your comments and answer your questions, and I look forward to a discussion. Thank you. Happy to take any questions or engage in a discussion. It's very hard to see with these. Yes, ma'am. I appreciate your perspective and your comments, and I think part of that I think is first starting with what's the desire of the individual, and I think you first have to start with, do you want to serve, and then find pathways to that service, and I think if we do that, then these scholarships and these programs don't become a program of last resort. It's a way to enable the desires of that individual to have impact. And so I think it is really important that we do tell these very personal stories of how people achieved their station in life or what they're doing, but really that it has to start from that desire to have impact, right? To create, as I said, to create options for yourself and to create opportunity. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir, for all your comments. I'm an Army veteran who retired and is now at Grazetta Business School at Emory University. And I've been there for about 10 years. And over the last 5 years, we've seen an increasing number of transitioning veterans, particularly enlisted, coming into our business school. Is there anything that's being done, and obviously using our post 9/11 GI Bill benefits and the Yellow Ribbon Program to help finance that. Is there any thoughts in DOD in increasing some of those educational benefits to keep pace with the rising cost of tuition and other costs that they're encountering?
So I just want to make sure I'm clarifying that I understand. Are you talking specifically related to tuition assistance, or for ththose who may be using the accession?
No, I'm particularly talking about the VA benefits, the veterans benefits for post 9/11, not tuition assistance, and also the Yellow Ribbon Program that the VA has for participating universities to match some of their cost. And basically, the cost of tuition is outstripped how much benefits the veteran gets. So there's still increasing gaps in terms of what it costs the veterans to get both their undergraduate and graduate degrees in terms of as they approach this, with particularly in the last few years with rising costs of education. So with inflation, is the Department of Defense looking to increase the veterans' benefits for education?
Yeah, so I think one of the things and there's as we look at one, total compensation and at benefits, we look at, we try and look at that total package. So this year we're looking at there's a quadrennial review on military compensation. So we're looking at that side, just, what people get as they're in service. Specifically around increasing the veteran benefit, I'll have to get back to you on that. I don't have the specific answer on where in the current budget we are not.
Sir, I'm Patrick Jones from Penn State, and I served both active duty in the Army and then a career in the Air National Guard. And one of the things that I experienced over the years was folks having trouble moving kind of seamlessly back and forth. And so I understand what the Space Force wants to do in terms of basically an individual mobilization augmentee approach to having people be able to go part-time, full-time, part-time. But we have opportunities now with folks who can move from one component to another and back and forth, but we don't make it easy for them to do that. Is there any of that being addressed?
So I think one of the ways that we're trying to address that is through duty status reform. And so making it easier so that as people are serving in the different components, as they're going from into the active portion of their service versus when they're and making sure that they're getting those benefits through that and facilitating that. So and one of the things that we will look at, and I mentioned that that Brent has joined us as the Chief Talent Management Officer, we're specifically looking at not only just the civilian workforce, but the military component as well, as trying to make sure that those opportunities for permeability, whether it's from military to civilian or across the components, to make sure that we're streamlining that. So that is one of the things that we're looking at specifically. I think as Secretary Rosker had mentioned, there are significant opportunities for us, and that's one of the things that Brent has been charged with is to think creatively about how do we make it easier for people to find those degrees of flexibility in their service.
Thank you.
Pleasure having you here at Syracuse. I'm Captain Rick Wright, United States Navy, retired, public affairs community, also professor emeritus, 40 years on the famous Newhouse School, which is right across the street. My question is this: with our numbers decreasing with regards to our young people really knowing about the military, when are we going to pick up our efforts of really, in a positive manner, with all the incredible media platforms that we have today, to really tell our story and to put some resources behind the telling of that story, of those many stories, is pretty much the world I'm looking at. I mean, I've been on 5 university faculties, 40 here at Syracuse, taught a lot of students. I came in the Navy under the Navy Campus Liaison Officer Program, working with CRUCOM, Naval Recruiting Command. I used to wear my uniform to class, and the whole reason was to show the incredible positive aspects of serving your country. But as I look at even here at Syracuse, I talk to students all the time. What about a military career? And they have really learn all of the negative side. And I think it's time for us to put some resources on the table to tell our positive stories. There was a time when daddy's or granddaddy's photograph or mama's photograph was on the famous fireplace in the living room, and as you indicated, in your family. But I am just simply saying we need to put some resources on the table to get an incredible story of telling the incredible positive opportunities, and it'll make it easy for them when they're here. Earlier, Sean mentioned about that whole area of, finding some of our good students to bring them here to get graduate degrees and put them into the service. Over at the Newhouse School, I never forget Pat Philman, Coast Guard officer, was on board a Coast Guard cutter when Challenger exploded. And all the debris came down, and he brought his cutter back in to port at Cape Canaveral, Cape Kennedy. And the Coast Guard Commandant was watching it on television, CNN. And here was a young Coast Guard officer, Lieutenant J.G. at the time. And they said, my God, we got our young Coast Guard officer in a horrible situation here. That is, basically all the news media was waiting for him. And I never forget a call that said, hey, we need to find a place to send him to get him trained in media skills. Pat came to Syracuse, where he eventually got his PhD. I think of Derek Engel, great naval PAO who just graduated from our program a couple of years ago. Found him in the fleet, and we made it easy for them to come and get their degrees and get back out into the fleet. So pretty much my question is, did I have a question or did I have a comment here? But it's a pleasure to have her. In fact, this particular session is incredible. A person who is smiling in heaven this morning is Chancellor William P. Tolley, as we look at what we're talking about. Also, I want to bring up the fact that this is the 75th year again of President Truman's signature on Executive Order 9981. I'm on the historical committee of a major ad hoc committee that right now we are working to ensure what that particular date, July 28, 1948, meant. The desegregation of our U.S. military. And our history has been horrible in that area, and we know those questions and answers already. So let me just shut down and enjoy the moment. Welcome to Syracuse. Dillard University is here, and oh my God, my dear friend, Dr. Melvin Stead. Mel, I see you sitting there with her, right? Norfolk State.
Sir,
I'm a graduate of Elizabeth City State University, so.
Sir, thank you for your service and thank you for your comments. And I appreciate, the point you bring up is and hopefully it came through is we do need to tell these positive stories. We do need to take the narrative back. There are many, many, many positive stories of service. There are folks like Seth Bodner. There are folks like Jared Lyons. There's folks like Colonel Chauncey Schaefer, who I serve with, Dewan Wilker, who's sitting next to her. There are many, many, many young people who have done younger than I am, right? Younger than you are, who have done amazing things through their service, and we need to tell that story, and we have not done a very good job of that. We've allowed the narrative to be grabbed by people who want to detract from service and what we're trying to do. So that's on us. But that's one thing, and I will come back to this, is we need your help. Because one of the things I think the Generation Z does very well is they look for authenticity. And they don't want a scripted story. They want to understand that personal connection, and that requires each of us to tell our personal stories and then for us to amplify those stories. So I appreciate what you do here at the Newhouse School and helping military PAOs, storytellers, get out there and build their craft and their trade and to do that. And I also will tell you that you asked, are we going to put anything behind that? We actually have a significant increase in our budget to what we're doing in the area of marketing and advertising and storytelling. And so we're hopeful that that budget will pass and in this next NDA, and we'll get that increase so that we are able to do the types of things that you're talking about. So thank you for amplifying that point.
Bravo Zulu,
And for those of you who aren't from the Navy, we'll have to translate that for you later. Admiral Carter can help us out. I know I'm coming to the end of the time here. Unless there are any other questions, how about from any of the young cadets here? Any? No. Okay. All right. Well, with that, I'd like to end where I started by expressing gratitude to Syracuse University and the University of Tennessee for bringing us together for this very timely and important dialogue, and to each of you for raising a call to national and community service and for your own personal service. Thank you very much.